The Civil War affected everyone in the United States. This war was almost inescapable. Families suffered, and young men and husbands from each side, North and South, faced each other to fight for their beliefs. Prejudice and hate spread like a wildfire through the nation. How could such large issues be resolved? Both the North and South were at their boiling points, and it was only time before their disagreements boiled over. Unfortunately, the runoff ended in a costly war, not only in supplies and money, but in all the lives lost of the men fighting for their families back home. Life in the Army was very difficult. The living conditions were vile. Most men during wartime didn't have the chance to change their undergarments for months on end, and for that matter didn't even have the chance to bathe for months either. This meant that the soldiers were actually covered with a layer of grease and dust. Then came the rats. Since armies made up camp wherever possible, they always had vermin following them into camp. The only way to rid the camp of these pesky critters was to boil them, but that took too much time, and the armies didn't have enough equipment to do so. While the men were away fighting, women and children stayed home and did everything that was needed to keep a country running. This was new to them, considering women did mostly housework at the time. Women and children found themselves on the farm doing everything from plowing and sewing to raising and tending of the animals. Today we are given all different choices of food. We can practically have anything we desire, and we are even able to get it from different places of the world. Now imagine yourself exhausted, not only having salt pork, hardtack, potatoes, and coffee to eat for months on end, with maybe an occasional dried apple thrown in. This is one account from Blue and Gray by Henry Steele. I began my description of rations of the bread as being the most important one to the soldier. Some old veterans may be disposed to the question of judgment which gives it this rank, and claim that coffee, of which I shall speak next, should take the first place in importance. When coffee beans arrived at an encampment, the regimental quartermaster would disperse the beans out to all the soldiers, and the soldiers would even grumble or become upset if they weren't given the same amount to each person. Coffee was one of the few luxuries that the soldiers had, and they had a difficult life in the war, and they did whatever they could to make it more bearable. This was the life of the soldiers during the Civil War. Difficult it was, but the nation carried through it and became stronger because of it. Though there were many difficulties in the war, they were all eventually resolved. But in the United States was even close to fulfilling its initial mission to give the people of our nation the ability of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.